It's
Well,
lunchtime.
perfect.
You're supposed
Yeah,
to
it's
be.
lunchtime. Yeah. Oh, the last book that I published, Successful Entrepreneurs with Grit, Lisa York, she had passed away during that journey. I get to meet her husband to give him her copies of books. I know. I know. Yeah, sad.
Yeah.
Anyway, I am going to kick it over to Karen so she can teach us about an amazing concept about finance and being in a sandwich generation and how you have to take over finances and be the captain of the ship when, generally speaking, it's
Oh,
not.
that's a different presentation.
Oh, that's the one for the senior living
That's the
facility.
one for that. Well, that's the one I could do at a different time, but that's more kind of targeting the sandwich generation. This is
Well,
targeting
why don't
all
you
women.
say both of the presentations that you do so then if anybody on this call has any
Oh,
opportunities for you, they can make those connections of what you speak
sure.
on.
So this is a presentation I'm doing right now that we'll go through, and it's just about learning about transition and how to empower ourselves and our clients to make the most out of all of these life transitions we go through. But I was telling Jen, I did a presentation to a senior living community yesterday that is primarily about when you have a spouse or a loved one that is starting to decline cognitively, what are the things that you need to be doing if you're the person that's now going to be the captain of the ship? So if you're now going to be responsible for their finances, their legal documents, things like that, what kind of conversations do you need to be having? And especially somebody declining cognitively, how do you keep them safe from fraud, monitoring their bank statements? We talk about different apps and things to use. And then what are the things you need to be doing when they pass away? As far as who do you notify and how do you get things executed? So I target that towards the sandwich generation, towards people that are the families of people that have someone in a long-term care facility, people with older parents. And then I'm also modifying it to speak to widows, so people that are already the captain of their ship and they're saying, okay, I have all this money now. I'm in charge. I've never been in charge before. I just lost my spouse. I'm dealing with that piece of the puzzle. And now how do I manage all these finances and what do I need to be doing? And so we talk about doing all that. And it's all about, people being empowered, confident, have clarity, understand their finances, understand their legal documents, and have all that in place. So yeah, I'm happy to do any kind of speaking engagements or anything anybody would like, and can always modify. So
Well, thank you. I'm excited to learn. And if anybody has any questions, feel free to type them in the chat and then I will go ahead and ask Karen, unless you want to unmute and we can kind of see how that goes. But
yeah, either way is fine. Fine with me. All right, I'm going to jump in and share my screen. We're hoping that that is working fine. Everybody okay with that? All
looks like
right.
it's slowly loading. I think you have to double click
Double click.
for full screen mode.
Full screen. Double click on.
I think the screen that you want to have shared. Of course, we tested this out before you guys were all here and it worked
Yeah, it
perfectly.
was fine, right?
That's always how it goes. So
Still not up fully?
no, if you hit the share button and then you click the screen that you want to have shared, it should then be able to share.
Yeah.
There we go. It's on. Okay, now we're all set.
All right, so welcome everybody. As you know, I'm Karen Maurer. I'm a senior wealth advisor and a partner with G.R.I.T Financial. I specialize primarily in working with women, but not exclusively, and helping them navigate through transitions of widowhood, retirement, and kind of any of those what now pivots of life. So basically, we all experience emotional, financial, and spiritual changes. And this conversion about how we not only survive through disruptions, but we emerge stronger, more confident, and with clarity. So when we look at change, there's a book that I've read that really resonated with me called Life is in the Transitions by Bruce Feiler. If anybody wants a copy, please reach out to me. I will be happy to send it to you. It really has changed how I look at things for myself and in how I service my clients. And basically, Bruce talks about as we go through life, like stuff happens, right? And he calls those changes disruptors. So, getting married, relocating jobs, a change in religious belief, those are all changes in our life because even though we were taught that life is linear when we're kids and we say, you know, I'm going to do this forever and I'm going to marry this person and stay with them forever and I'm going to be a fireman forever. We know at this point in life that that's not true. So when we look at these disruptors, some of them are more disruptive to our lives than others. Those that are really, I call kind of catastrophic, are considered life quakes. A life quake can take us 3 to 5 years to navigate through. They can be things like the death of a child, the death of a loved one, bankruptcy, the pandemic, changes in sexual identity for yourself or a loved one, an abusive relationship. You know, those aren't things that you wake up one day and you've just moved through. They seriously disrupt our lives. Bruce has studied to over 200 people for decades, and he found that each of these life quakes can take 2 to 5 years to move through, and we each have about five of them. So if it takes us 5 years to move through, we have 5 of them. We could be spending 25 years of our life in a massive state of transition. That's pretty significant in my book. And when we look at these disruptions, they're not all the same. Some are voluntary. We choose to change our career. Some are involuntary. Somebody else chooses that we're going to have a change in career. So sometimes it's about, you know, oftentimes we feel victimized, but sometimes we kind of brought it on ourselves, and that's okay. But when something happens that's involuntary and it's the unexpected, this is how we feel, right? It's just overwhelming. So I had a client named Diane, and she definitely came to me feeling like she was drowning under crashing waves. Her husband had unexpectedly passed away. She was 67. She had been a wife and a mother her whole life. That was her identity. Her children were now grown. They had moved away, and her son had just passed. So she was alone, isolated, stuck. She had no identity. She wasn't who she thought she was. And she had never managed the household finances. So she had no clarity, comfort, security with regard to the money. They had, in this case, quite a significant, sizable investments, but she still didn't feel comfortable. So she came to me and had no idea whether she would be okay or not, and just seeking some type of security. So, first of all, we talked about and recognized that she was going through these transitions. You know, again, Bruce had kind of broken it down and he labels it the long goodbye, where we kind of recognize that what we knew is no longer. So, we don't live in that house anymore. We don't have that job anymore. Our spouse isn't physically sitting next to us anymore. Once you recognize that, you go through what he calls the messy middle, which is just kind of that chaotic, like where your head feels like a spinning salad bowl. And then you evolve into a new beginning. Looking at it a little bit more specifically, what happens during each of these stages? Well, during the long goodbye, we're actually accepting this state of transition, that something has happened, and we're acknowledging our emotions, sadness, shame, guilt, anger. We're sharing the feelings authentically. Sharing it with someone helps us move through this accepting stage. Embracing your vulnerability. And those of us that are grit authors know that writing about your experience is critical. Then when we move into that messy middle, it's about kind of shedding who you were, shedding what things used to look like. So departing from the old routines. Instead of Diane having coffee with her husband every morning, maybe she's going to create a new beginning by taking a walk with a neighbor. It's about stepping into uncharted territory. How many of us during the pandemic, you know, started to bake bread or do artwork or do adult paint by numbers. You step into something new and discover something creative about yourself. And also during that messy middle, you want to establish some type of new structure, some type of new routine. These things lead us to taking on bold risks, using creativity to help us heal. For Diane, this blew my mind. She decided that she had never had a college degree. She regretted it. She was ashamed about it. So she actually enrolled at the St. Louis Community College. And while I knew her, at 72, she got her associate's degree and learned a new language of Spanish. So she found a new version of herself that she would have never had the opportunity to do, and kind of, I don't want to say made the best of a horrible situation, but just elaborated and became a bigger, prouder version of herself. So if we look back to some experiences that we may have had and how we have evolved through that, you may see a different, better version of yourself actually came out of the end. Some things that help carry us through kind of primarily that messy middle area are things like, excuse me, religious practices, going to church, meditation, daily routines, yoga, walking the dog, prayerful time, journaling, physical activities, some of those I just mentioned, and other creative outlets. Those are things, those types of rituals help create stability, help create grounding when you're in that messy middle. Also important to be that source of grounding for your friends and clients. So I heard an interesting story yesterday. A financial advisor that's in a coaching group that I'm part of had said that he reached out to somebody that wanted to become a client. He sent them all the paperwork. He talked to them several times. They had a plan. He said, fill out the paperwork. We'll get the accounts up and running, and then we'll schedule the next meeting. Well, never sent back the paperwork. He followed up with emails. The client never responded with emails, never heard from him. And he said he basically just ghosted him. A year later, that person circled back to him and said, hey, I'm ready to get started now. I want to go ahead and fill out that paperwork. And the advisor said, hey, that's great, but what happened here? Did I miss something? And he said, I had some things happen in my life. I just went into a dark hole. I was just in a place where I didn't want to deal with finances and I didn't want to deal with things. I didn't even open your emails. And now I'm through that and I'm ready to move forward. And when I heard that, and I thought, that's a great testament to us having to be mindful of what our clients are going through, what our customers may be going through. And when we're reaching out to somebody and they're not responding, or they're not calling back, or they're not committing and signing on that dotted line, it may be worthwhile to reach out to them in a different way. Maybe offer to just have a cup of coffee with them or take a walk with them, because they may be going through something else right then, and maybe dealing with their IT services, or they're getting them to get their chapter in the book to you, or whatever you're working on people with. Maybe we need to have a little bit more compassion or an insight into what else could be going on, because if things are happening to us, we know they're happening to our peers and our clients and our colleagues. The other thing that's really important, and this is something that I did for Diane and you could do for your clients and friends, is help them build that support team and give them ideas of where you can find support. I am not a person who has a huge circle of friends, and by nature. And so when I look at this, I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't have this monster community. Well, Jen has given us all the gift of having a community. and having a community of friends, colleagues, peers. So organizations like Grit can provide your clients and your friends a resource for support. I feel very comfortable that I could reach out to any of you and say, hey, could you grab a cup of coffee with me? I just need to talk through something. Um, and I feel like we all are there for each other in this vein, but encouraging other people to join communities or join Grit to find that support. Leaning on trusted professionals. So if it's appropriate, pulling in an attorney, an accountant, a financial advisor, a realtor, a coach, a nutritionist, um, all of those things to help your client be healthy and have support. Encourage their participation in their faith, whatever that looks like, their family, their friends. It's important. And I even went so far as Diane was very introverted, did not have a community, did not have a circle of friends, was not faith filled. So I called my mom, who was a little bit older, but I asked my mom to take her to lunch just to help her get out of the house and just realize how much just having one activity a day would help her. And then, of course, don't forget to prioritize your own health. Also important is you're basically rewriting the narrative. So we're taking our story, and in Diane's case, she's no longer a wife, she's now a widow. She's not a mother, she may be becoming a grandmother, or because her kids don't need the same kind of parenting. And what are we now? So what is our me story? Who are we going to be at this time in our life? How do we connect with others? They call that the we story. How do we belong to organizations or groups? And then what is our greater purpose, our calling? How are we giving back? How are we fitting into the bigger picture? What is your quote, the story? I never take time to stop and think about myself and the impact that I can have on people in this capacity. But when I read this book and I started going through this, and I thought, yeah, well, what are we all doing here? And what am I doing here for myself and for my core group and for the story? And as we know, this is a good reminder that our story can heal others. So writing and putting your thoughts on paper, telling your story. We know those of us that are authors have that was a tremendous way to process our experience. In my chapter, you will read that I had married my college sweetheart. We had 2 kids. We were best friends. We ran a household together. We parented together. It really just fell in step. It went as well as I ever thought it could have. And 10 years into our marriage, my husband told me he was gay. When I wrote about that in Grit, it was the first time I had talked about it since the 25 years ago that it happened. So that was a transition that honestly, I was probably still stuck in the messy middle for 25 years. I felt healthy that I had processed it, but what I hadn't done was I hadn't really ever talked about it. And when you talk about it, as I'm sure some of us have experience with, and maybe we can share at the end about, people kind of come out of the woodwork and they say, oh, my brother's in that situation. Oh, my son is in this situation. Oh, I have a girlfriend that went through the same thing. I have never known so many people to be married to a gay person in my life, but it is out there and it is out there a lot. So chances are what you have gone through could provide comfort and security to someone else who's gone through something similar and thought maybe they were the only one. So you help connect people, you help build those support networks. The other thing is accept gentle nudges from others. So if you've got a friend who is stuck, it's okay to nudge them to say, hey, why don't we talk about this? Or, hey, I've got somebody that you might want to meet. Jen is great at this because when you know so many people and you know their stories, connecting people with similar stories, people who have lost children or who have been divorced. We know that provides some support. And that creates those bonds and creates that sense of community. So when we look at Diane, what happened to her was she and I started a journey. As she went through her college education courses, she slowly felt, you could just tell even in her posture, that she was more confident, that she felt like she could at least comprehend a conversation about her finances. She literally has millions of dollars, and she still lives with envelopes in her purse where she budgets herself certain amount of money for groceries and gas and everything each week. And if she spends more than that on groceries, then she just doesn't buy anymore. So sometimes you're not going to change how somebody, works, and that's fine. But at least she knows that if she wanted to spend more, she could. She understands what that means. She knows she can go out to lunch with a friend. She knows she could take a trip if she wanted to. So, she basically went through this distraught, introverted person to somebody that has confidence and is building new patterns, new traditions, and continuing to enhance her life. I love this picture. Your scars become your strengths, and we learn from them, and we can share them. And adapting your business to what your clients are going through is critical. Understanding and pointing out to them the disruptors that they're experiencing, and that it's okay to be in the middle and perhaps look at new routines and reach out for help and join those communities can really help take someone from a life quake to a life force. So your new chapter awaits. As I mentioned, I specialize in working with women primarily from the financial side as they're navigating through different transitions that have a financial impact on them. But as we've said, we can all be cognizant of what women are going through and help them by understanding this process and teaching them about the process. And there's the legal mumbo jumbo for you and the sources. So hopefully that was helpful to you all. Does anybody have any questions, or would anybody be willing to share some personal experiences that might help the rest of us understand and have some other examples of perhaps, you went through a divorce and or lost a job, but ended up somewhere better, and give us a little light at the end of the tunnel inspiration?
I did. I think some of the people that wrote the Gala may have heard it, but I did get a divorce last year, and it was hard because I still love him. I still love him. It was addiction was involved, and I was hoping that me leaving would be his rock bottom, and sometimes it isn't, right? And I had to make a choice for myself and my son, and I moved a 4-bedroom, 3-bath house by myself, and I found a new home, and I moved, and I sold a lot of the furniture there and managed all of that, and I got a new home in closer to my family, and I have furnished it, and I've been here in September will be a year. And since I left, I finished my coaching certification, and I am now signed up for my second certification in executive coaching. And I have got my first coaching client that I'm working with. And so while it was hard and while I started over, I was okay. And I was okay because I had my own bank account and I had my own savings, and I financially did not wrap myself up into somebody. And a lot of women do that because that's how we're taught. But we did it very differently, and maybe that was some of the demise of my marriage. I don't know, but I'm grateful. I had family that prayed for me, that loved me and helped me, and I had this community which helped me as well. So it can be devastating. And I will say that a lot of my savings is gone, like because I had to buy new. But I know that financially, I still have my 401k and I will rebuild. But just waking up and the peace that I have in my home, not wondering what version of my partner I'm going to get, is um, worth way more than any money I had in the bank. So.
That's fantastic. I appreciate you sharing that. And I think, there are other people, certainly people who have dealt with addiction, either in a loved one, a family member, a friend, and understand how much you get sucked into that, how much it becomes a life quake in your life, as well as the person that's going through that, and impacts your children and the entire family. But I love what you said about reaching out to, you had your family support, and I'm sure they probably helped nudge you in a direction here and there, and your grit community and your other communities. I think it makes a huge difference. We can't deal with these things in a bubble. It just doesn't happen. Or if it does, it, takes you 25 years instead of 3 to 5 years. Would anybody else be willing to share?
I'll share.
Hi, Amy.
Hi.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of you might know my story too, but what Taryn shared resonated with me, and also Karen, what you shared resonated with me. But I am on my third marriage. In the past, I used to feel like a failure, but now I just laugh at it and say I'm like a rock star. I like to have a good time and get married. So, but in all seriousness, my first husband, similar to you, Karen, he came out after 3 years. I found out he was bisexual. And that's not really I'm not, for or against that for people's beliefs, but if you want to start a family, that wasn't the environment I wanted to be in. And then my second husband was addicted to not working and being lazy. So I was a financial babysitter. And I think the best thing that came out of that I tell people today is that part of number one, it inspired me to start my habit finder coaching business. But one of the biggest philosophies of that is that your life experiences are your greatest gift and your greatest asset. And, we can choose to find the good in those situations. And the way I look back is it's like, both of those people taught me who I don't want to be with. And they both taught me, personal and financial boundaries that wasn't very good at before I met both of them. So I think and it also led me to who I'm married to right now, which is like the one I feel like I, wish I would have met many years ago. But again, I wasn't the same version of myself back then. So I think that all of this that you shared today is so important. And really, as you have said, and as Taryn said, surrounding yourself with a support network, my friends, my family helped me get through all of it. And even today, when I'm going through my worst times, I remind myself that, there was a time when I almost died when I was 9 years old. And if I can get through whatever I'm going through right now, it's not as crazy as that experience was. So I thought your message was very, very wise and very timely today. So thank you for that.
Thank you. I
And this
appreciate
is
that.
why it's really important to help each other within their grit community, so each of us can build up our bank accounts.
That's right. And my second divorce, I mean, it was a 6-figure divorce. So,
Yeah.
felt like I started over so many ways, but it was like, as again, back to what Taryn shared, I think part of it, I heard somebody say this one time that, there is such thing as expensive education. And sometimes I think you've got to pay to get people out of your life. And that's the way I look at it. So it all made me a better person. That's where I come.
Yeah, and thank you, Amy. And it's getting rid of that toxicity. And like you said, sometimes it costs something else. But it's important. I love what you said too about becoming a different version of yourself and learning to set boundaries. I mean, if we all look at the 20-year-old version of ourselves, we didn't even know we were supposed to set boundaries. I didn't. I never even knew. And I just talked to a woman about this the other day. And it was an addictive, or her husband is an addict. And she was saying that, she's got to set boundaries, that this is okay and this is not. And I thought, well, we all need to, with anybody, with any relationship, And we have a right to protect our space and to protect any infringements on that are not okay with us, which is also very empowering.
I agree.
Anybody else? Diana, Joni, you guys come up first on my thing.
I'll come on.
Hey,
I'm
Sarah.
new.
Thank you.
Hi. I'm new, but yeah, last year my husband passed away. So when you talked about being a widow, obviously that certainly struck a chord. Um, and being prepared for that, which unfortunately I had time because he had cancer, so it was a process. But we led what I call a modern traditional type marriage, meaning we were together for 27 years, and I hadn't paid a single bill since I was 22 years old. Um, and all I had to do was focus on was my career, which was wonderful because I could succeed, I could focus, put the blinders on. And there were times where it was, hey, do you want to sit down and go over this with me and let me show you? Nope, not interested. That's your role. This is mine. There were times that I was naive enough to call and just say, I'm going to make a purchase. Do I have money? Okay, great, thanks. And it was just comical, but that was the relationship I was comfortable with. Fortunately, he was such a wonderful partner that I didn't even think about it at all. And he knew me well enough that when he did finally pass, I went into our home office and I just sat there like, I have no idea what I'm supposed to do. I don't know passwords. I don't know accounts. I don't know where money is. And I opened the desk drawer and he literally had everything lined up for me, every single account, every single password. He put everything on automatic bill pay. Everything was already done. But there's so many women that I talked to. I went through, grief therapy groups and things of that nature of women that just were going through the same process at the same time, that had gone through the process, that just said, it's taken me a year or I'm months in and I'm still finding or still trying to get accounts situated. And it was something that I didn't even think about because I didn't have to for 27 years. And if he hadn't have been the person that he was, I would have been in that exact same boat that so many women are in. So it's so important that no matter how much, you kind of feel confident with my spouse is great, both sides, because it could happen either way, a husband or wife could pass, that you really do have to set yourselves up to be in the position to know where things are. Even if that's not your day-to-day, month-to-month role, you still kind of got to know where things are. I mean, my husband didn't necessarily cook, but he certainly knew where, the food was. So I just obviously tell everybody, I'm like, listen, here's what you got to do. And it sounds, it's a terrible thing to have to bring up, but it's like, I know you're only 32, but are you prepared just in case something happens? Do you have your password set up? Do you have this? Because I'm just telling you, I was blessed and so lucky, but I really didn't realize what kind of mess I could have been in. So it obviously I emotionally distraught, but fortunately not financially or day to day distraught with just kind of being able to move forward with everything else when you've got so much else going on. That's the last thing you want to be stressing about.
Right. And your role has changed because I'm sure you became caretaker on some level.
Oh, yeah, I was very stubborn. I became caretaker. I was lived at the hospital, basically. I just still worked, but became more of, I'm fortunate enough to run a team in real estate. So because of that, I can delegate out all the duties and I can just field phone calls and work off my laptop. So I don't have to be boots on the ground necessarily. I've got people that I manage that do that. But I just basically set up shop at the hospital, and that became my office. And when I brought him home, I worked from home and basically checked out and just said, good luck, you guys. The business is in your hands. I've got more important things to do, and don't call me. I'll call you. So, and then after that, obviously, then coming into a situation where running a household and a business, when I've always had a partner that we just kind of split the responsibilities of everything, bringing all of that on has definitely been a bit of a challenge, of all of a sudden kind of going, well, wow, I didn't realize all the things that somebody actually did. Dumb things. I've got somebody that mows the lawn. I didn't realize he didn't pull weeds. Um, so, I've got, I didn't realize, the patio furniture actually has to get put out. Somebody does that. It doesn't just put itself out come springtime. Um, I didn't realize, trees don't trim themselves. All of those kind of things the cars don't wash themselves either. All that kind of stuff where I just took for granted of like, these are things that somebody does. And I didn't realize, oh yeah, my husband, he did all those things. And then there's the other stuff. My dog now gets to sleep with me, so he's excited. So yeah, it's been a definite change. It's been a little over a year, 14 months now. And so life has just kind of become a little bit normalized. It's a different, my new normal, but I can at least talk about this now and not totally break down and just sobbing tears and going, never mind, I'll tell you the story later. So that's progress.
That is, and you're very brave to share it. Thank you so much for sharing your story.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I really appreciate that.
Well, I can
Sarah, I just wanted to say the positivity that you're exuding, and I know it's been very, very difficult, is just, I don't know, it's powerful. So I just wanted to commend you on where you are in your healing journey and send some love that you had to go through it.
Thanks. I think that I was first in line when the powers that be handed out enthusiasm. I don't drink coffee, and I am just like this all the time. And at the present moment, I'm like giving you a low vibe. So
I don't drink coffee either, so we'll be fine.
well,
Any other comments? Yeah, Joni?
share, my parents and my aunt and uncle, I had to take care of all of their estate stuff. And I remember when I was at my very first job, this woman, her husband had a heart attack on somebody else's front porch and just dropped dead. And overnight, and he would not share with her any financial information. So when that happened, I think she was only 47 and she just had no idea how to proceed. And so my parents were, very well prepared, but they didn't really kind of tell us where things were, and they didn't have things titled correctly. They were from the generation that liked to like squirrel away money, which is not helpful when you're trying to like plan a transition. And when people have health issues, um, a lot of times their ability to deal with stuff really declines, as you were saying at the beginning, Karen. And so some of the things that I inherited were just a real mess. It took me, I think, 3 years to close my parents' estate because, like, after the first year, I'd start getting stuff in the mail that I had no idea existed. And, it was just a surprise, one surprise after another. And so when my aunt and uncle were started to get sick, they didn't have any kids. And I got a team around me rather than just me doing everything myself. I had another cousin who had a background in nursing. And so she helped with the doctor's appointments and the insurance while I handled the financial stuff, the checking, the taxes, the bill paying. And it really helped to be able to have somebody to, talk things through with. and to share, and it gave a level of transparency in the family that provided more trust, as well as our team of professionals that you mentioned, the accountant, the tax person, the financial advisor, the lawyer, all of that. And so it's really important, I think, as much as people prepare, that whoever's going to be taking care of it, like Sarah's wonderful husband, you share the information so that when it comes time, you're going through your own grief as a human being, but the process that you have to do to take care of all that they worked for, and to just take care of their final journey, and all of that goes much more smoothly. You can do all the best preparation in the world, but if the communication skills aren't there, and a communication plan with family and friends and whoever's going to be involved, it just makes it that much harder. And some of those things then either fall through the crack, or they're subject to taxes or problems that they didn't have to be. So it's really kind of a ginormous team effort. And so
Right.
that's kind of what I learned from the things that I went through. And I went through this like 30 years ago, before anybody was talking about any of this stuff. So I was just totally flying by the seat of my pants.
Well, and that's you're the classic story of what I'm trying to either prevent or help with is, it's hard to get to the people kind of ahead of time to say, hey, your parents are aging or your relatives are aging. Let's have a talk about making sure you've got all these things done, because there might be a case where you need to change a beneficiary or update a health directive, not realizing that laws have changed. All that stuff is just important to have in constant conversation, but people are private and protective, and grew up one way or the other, and they're deep seated in those traditions and those roots. So I would love if anybody has any ideas of places or opportunities or comes across them, for me to either speak, educate, or even if it's just a one person situation, just to be able to help out, to say, hey, don't forget and look at these things. Because, to Joni's point, there's so much that can be done ahead of time. Then you're able to be just the caretaker or deal with the emotions, and you're not dealing with unwinding these disasters that could have been prevented.
Yeah.
And that's what we want to try to do. And really helping, and Sarah, I might reach out to you if you don't mind, but helping in those, with widows as you're, trying to organize. And I've been trying to talk to a couple widows groups, and saying, what can you do to be more organized over here, so that you can spend your time healing and not your time figuring out if you have enough money to do this, that, or the other thing.
Yeah, I will tell you, somebody who basically, like I said, I really felt a little naive, because as at the age that I am, and kind of going, oh my gosh, how do I mean, I'm pretty astute and a quick learner, but it was like, okay, let me get online and figure out this auto bill pay. Let me figure out how to do this. Let me figure out how to transfer money from here to there. Let me just get acclimated with all of what I've got to be on top of and double check. Um, and it was just familiarizing myself with everything. I mean, there's a lot that goes on. Even just, after about 5 months, I was patting myself on the back, and I'm like, kept the lights on, water's still running, and, I've got internet and the TV's still on, and those are kind of the basics that I was just like, good job. Sounds silly enough, but when that's not what you do, those are little small baby steps that I was like, I'm going to take a win wherever I can get one, because I'm already emotionally drained. And if I can just kind of say, good, I did it. I took a shower and I was happy. Um, so
Yeah.
all of those kind of things are just definitely, where they seem small at the time, in hindsight, it's where now I look back and go, I didn't give myself enough grace, and I didn't give myself really enough credit for what I was going through at the time. But in hindsight, I'm like, really, really, that was tough and a lot. Yeah. But it's nice to have somebody look back and just kind of go, it may not seem like a big deal today, but in 8 months, you're going to look back and go, wow. So today you can give yourself a little bit of meh, but in 8 months, then you're going to look back and say, good job. And sometimes it's good to hear that, because everybody kept telling me, like, you're doing great. You're doing wonderful. And I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm not. And it was the people that related to me the most that just said, this sucks. And I was like, yeah, this sucks. Thank you. And it was those people that I was like, oh, finally, somebody's not trying to cheer me up or make me feel good. You get it. And so just talking with somebody that was walking in my shoes helped. Whereas everybody else was that, they were trying to come from a good place, and it all came from love. But it was kind of like, I don't want you to try to cheer me up. I don't want you to tell me I'm doing well. I know I'm dropping the ball. I know I'm doing a shitty job. Just tell me it's fine, because this sucks. You're in a shitty situation. But you know what? You're doing the best you can. Yeah, you're right. So when you do talk to widows, it's sometimes nice just to kind of be told it's okay to not be okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great advice. Fantastic advice.
Yeah, I would just encourage everybody to meet with their financial person once a year, because things change, and it's like a muscle. If you keep putting it off, then it becomes big and overwhelming. But if you do little things and keep planning and think about that communication plan with whoever needs to be, with you in that. That's really important. And Karen, the community colleges used to have like all kinds of classes that they did either for free or really low cost before the pandemic. I don't know if they've come back or if they've come back online, but I saw lots of classes like the ones that you're offering available. So I check that out, either San
That's a
Jose
great
Community
idea. Thank
College,
you.
St. Charles Community College. They both had all kinds of great offerings, because it's really a community service. Just
Right.
to start with some of this basic information.
Thank you. Great idea. Well, ladies, I thank you, everybody. I appreciate the great conversation and the feedback. And, just keep in mind, anything you say is so important, because somebody's listening and is going to pull a little nugget of that's going to change how they look for the rest of the day. So appreciate all the feedback and contribution to the conversation. And I'll turn it back over to Jen.
Well, thank you all for joining us today. Thank you again, Karen. This was really interesting. And I hope if anybody has any opportunities for Karen, that they keep her in mind in regards to the speaking opportunities. And hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day. I will make sure this is uploaded onto our Grit YouTube station. And if you don't already have the luncheon on the calendar, we're actually going to be talking about successful entrepreneurs with grit. And I was just trying to remember the date. It's July 30th. So yeah, and Sarah is one of those authors, so Sarah's going to actually be one of the panelists. Yeah, so
That's great.
see you guys.
Thanks, everyone.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.